When a 9-year-old boy in clothes too big for his frame walked into a dusty gas station convenience store, he looked like any other kid on a long road trip, tired and bored. But when he slipped a folded, grimy piece of paper into the hand of a biker filling up his tank, a man the world knew only as Stone, he did more than just ask for help. He lit a fuse. Stone's gut feeling, a ghost from his years in the service, screamed that the man waiting in the sedan by the pumps was not the boy's father. That single, desperate act set off a chain of events that would turn a routine Saturday afternoon into a tense standoff and forge an unbreakable bond in the heart of the desolate American landscape. The asphalt shimmered under the oppressive glare of the afternoon sun, a river of heat flowing through the vast, empty expanse of the desert. The gas station was an island in a sea of sand and scrub brush, its red and white sign a lonely beacon for miles in any direction. The air was thick with the smell of gasoline, hot rubber, and the faint, dusty scent of sage. It was a place of transience, a brief stop where stories intersected for a moment before diverging back onto the endless highway. To this island came Stone. At 45, he was built like the granite that gave him his road name, solid, weathered, and unmovable. His leather cut bore the insignia of the Iron Sentinels Motorcycle Club, a brotherhood forged not in rebellion, but in shared service and a common code. His beard was graying at the edges, and his eyes, the color of a stormy sea, had seen more than most. Before he was Stone, he was Sergeant Marcus Thorne of the United States Marine Corps, Force Reconnaissance. He had learned to read the world in a different language, a language of subtle shifts in weight, of glances held a second too long, of the silent vibrations of fear. His bike, a heavy-set Harley-Davidson Road Glide, rumbled with a low, contented growl as he filled its tank. He was on a solo ride, a pilgrimage of sorts, to clear his head and feel the pulse of the country beneath his wheels. The road was his church, the engine his hymn. He was alone, but never lonely. The brotherhood was always just a phone call away. That's when he saw them. A bland, 4-door sedan pulled up to the opposite pump. It was the kind of car designed to be forgotten the moment you looked away. A man got out of the driver's side. He was of average height and build, dressed in a polo shirt and slacks that seemed too neat, too clean for the grimy environment. He moved with a practiced calm that felt unnatural, his smile a thin, stretched thing that never reached his eyes. Then the back door opened, and the boy climbed out. He was small, with a mop of dark hair and large, dark eyes that seemed to swallow all the light around them. His t-shirt hung off his bony shoulders, and his jeans were bunched up at the ankles. He looked exhausted, not the simple weariness of a long drive, but a deep, soul-crushing fatigue that didn't belong on a child's face. Stone felt it immediately. A cold, sharp prickle at the base of his neck. It was the old instinct, the one that had kept him and his men alive in places where death was a constant, patient companion. He saw the way the man's hand rested on the boy's shoulder, not a gesture of paternal affection, but of ownership. The boy's body was stiff, his movement small and contained, as if he were trying to take up as little space in the world as possible. The man guided the boy toward the convenience store, murmuring something Stone couldn't hear. The boy nodded, his eyes fixed on the cracked pavement. He didn't look at the man. He didn't look at anything. He just moved forward like a puppet on a string. Stone finished with the pump, screwed the gas cap back on, and leaned against his bike, his posture casual, his senses on high alert. He wasn't a Marine sergeant anymore, but that part of him never truly retired. It just went dormant, waiting. He knew what a happy family looked like. He had seen them at rallies, at community barbecues hosted by the club. He knew the easy banter, the casual touches, the shared smiles. This was not that. This was a predator and his prey, attempting to mimic a scene of domestic normalcy. The performance was good, but Stone was an expert in detecting the flaws in any camouflage. The man's gaze swept the area constantly, not like a driver checking for traffic, but like a sentry scanning for threats. The boy's fear was a tangible thing, a low hum of energy that Stone could feel across the 20 yards of concrete separating them. He watched the boy shuffle into the store, the automatic door hissing shut behind him. The man stayed by the car, his attention fixed on the store's entrance, his fake smile gone, replaced by a mask of tense impatience. Stone lingered. He could just get on his bike and ride away. It was not his business. The world was full of shadows, and he couldn't fight them all. But the cold feeling in his gut was now a knot of ice. He had learned a long time ago that ignoring that feeling was how people got hurt. It was how men under his command didn't come home. He saw the boy through the large glass window of the store. The kid was wandering the aisles, his steps slow and aimless. He picked up a bag of chips, looked at it with disinterest, and put it back. He moved toward the coolers, his small reflection sliding across the glass doors. The man outside shifted his weight, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. He wanted this stop to be quick. He wanted to be invisible again. Stone's training taught him to break down a situation into its component parts. Observation, orientation, decision, action. He was still in the observation phase, gathering data. The mismatched clothes on the boy. The man's expensive watch glinting in the sun, a stark contrast to the beat-up sedan. The boy's pale, almost translucent skin, as if he hadn't been in the sun for a very long time. Each detail was a small, red flag, and together they were starting to form a banner. The boy walked toward the front counter. He didn't seem to be buying anything. He just stood there for a moment, his back to the window. Stone couldn't see his face, but he could see the slight tremor in the boy's shoulders. The clerk, a teenage girl with bored eyes, barely looked up from her phone. To her, this was just another kid. Another customer. She didn't see what Stone saw. She couldn't feel what he felt. The boy turned then, and his eyes met Stone's through the glass. It was only for a second, a fleeting connection across the sun-baked lot. But in that second, Stone saw it all. The desperate, silent plea. The terror. The flicker of a hope so fragile it could be extinguished by a breath. It was a look he had seen before, in the eyes of civilians trapped in crossfire, in the faces of people who had lost everything. It was the look of someone who believed they were utterly alone. The boy broke eye contact and began walking toward the exit. The man by the car straightened up, his plastic smile returning as the door hissed open. The boy walked slowly, his head down. As he passed the front of the store, he veered slightly, his path taking him a few feet closer to Stone and his motorcycle. The man took a step forward, his voice a sharp, low command. "Leo!" The car. Now the boy, Leo, flinched. He didn't look up. He just kept walking, his small feet scuffing the dusty concrete. He was now only a few feet from Stone's bike. Stone didn't move. He kept his body relaxed, his expression neutral. He was a mountain, a piece of the landscape. Nothing to see here. Nothing to worry about. As Leo passed, his hand, which had been clenched into a tight fist, opened slightly. Something small and white fell from it, landing on the ground near the toe of Stone's boot. It was a piece of paper, folded into a tiny square. It was so quick, so subtle, that anyone not watching with the intensity of a trained sniper would have missed it completely. Leo didn't break stride. He kept walking toward the car, his shoulders hunched, as if expecting a blow. The man's eyes narrowed, darting from Leo to Stone and back again. "What was that?" he asked, his voice no longer friendly. Stone didn't answer. He didn't even look at the man. He slowly bent down, his knees cracking in protest, and picked up the small square of paper. It felt damp and warm from the boy's terrified hand. The man took another step forward, his hand reaching toward his waistband. "That's nothing," he said, his voice hard. "Just trash." "Leave it." Stone straightened up, the note hidden in his large, calloused palm. He finally met the man's gaze. The mask of civility was gone. What lay beneath was cold, ruthless, and dangerous. Stone knew that look, too. It was the look of a predator whose hunt was about to be interrupted. The air between them crackled with unspoken violence. His blood went cold, not from fear but from a chilling certainty. The knot of ice in his stomach had solidified into a block of granite. He had his signal. He had his confirmation. The observation phase was over. Now, it was time to decide. He unfolded the paper in his hand, shielding it from the man's view. The writing was shaky, the pencil strokes of a child trying to write in secret. There were only 4 words. He is not my dad, and below that, one more. Help! The world seemed to stop. The hum of the gas pumps faded away. The roar of a distant semi on the highway was silenced. All that existed was the grimy piece of paper in his hand, the terrified boy now standing frozen by the sedan, and the predator watching him. 1,000 thoughts raced through Stone's mind. He could be wrong. This could be a prank, a misunderstanding, a domestic dispute that was none of his business. Getting involved could be messy. It could be dangerous. The man was already posturing, his hand still near his back. But then he thought of the boy's eyes. He thought of the tremor in his shoulders. He thought of the desperate hope he had seen in that one fleeting glance. He thought of the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis. Always faithful. Faithful to his country. Faithful to his brothers. And faithful to the innocent who couldn't protect themselves. He had made a promise to himself long ago, in the dust and chaos of a foreign land. He had promised that if he ever had the chance to stand between a monster and a child, he would not hesitate. He would become a wall. He would become unmovable. He would become stone. The decision was not a decision at all. It was an inevitability. He folded the note carefully and tucked it into the pocket of his leather vest. He looked past the man, directly at Leo. The boy was watching him, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and a new, dawning hope. Stone gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It was a promise. I see you. I'm here. He turned his full attention back to the man. Kid needs a drink, Stone said, his voice a low rumble. It's hot out here. I'll buy him a soda. The man's false smile returned, but it was brittle now, stretched to its breaking point. That's very kind of you, but we're in a hurry. My son and I have to get back on the road. He emphasized the word son, turning it into a weapon. He looks thirsty, Stone repeated, his voice calm but unyielding. He took a step forward, away from his bike, placing himself between the man and the store. He was subtly changing the geometry of the confrontation, controlling the space. The man's eyes flickered with panic. This wasn't going according to plan. Bikers were supposed to be trouble, but they were also supposed to mind their own business. This one wasn't. I said, we're fine. Now, if you'll excuse us. He grabbed Leo's arm, his fingers digging into the boy's thin bicep. Leo winced in pain. That was it. The line had been crossed. The time for talking was over. The orientation and decision phases had collapsed into a single, explosive moment. It was time for action. Let go of the boy, Stone said. It wasn't a request. It was a command, delivered with the full weight of his years of authority. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The man laughed, a short, ugly bark. You've got to be kidding me. You think a guy like you can tell me what to do with my own son? He started pulling Leo toward the car door. Get in the car. Leo. Stone moved. He wasn't a young man anymore, but his movements were efficient, precise, and deceptively fast. In 2 long strides, he closed the distance. He didn't reach for the man. He didn't reach for the boy. He simply placed himself in front of the car door, his body a solid wall of leather and muscle. You're in my way, the man snarled, his face twisting into a mask of pure rage. The facade was completely gone. I am, Stone agreed calmly. And I'm not moving. He had made his choice. He had cancelled his ride. This dusty patch of asphalt was now his battlefield. He had drawn his line in the sand. From the corner of his eye, he saw the teenage clerk finally look up from her phone, her bored expression replaced by one of alarm. He made eye contact with her and jerked his head slightly toward the phone behind her counter. Her eyes widened in understanding. She ducked down, out of sight. Help was on the way. Now, he just had to hold the line. The man shoved Leo behind him, trying to shield his actions. "You're making a big mistake," he hissed, his hand disappearing behind his back. A fatal one. Stone stood his ground. He didn't tense up. He didn't posture. He just watched the man's hands, his center of gravity low, his body ready to react. He had faced men with guns, men with knives, men with bombs. This pale, angry man in a polo shirt held no terror for him. He was just another monster, and Stone knew how to deal with monsters. "The mistake was yours," Stone said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "It was stopping here. It was letting me see his eyes." The situation escalated in a heartbeat. The man lunged, not at Stone, but at the car door, trying to shove the boy inside and flee. Stone was faster. He shot out a hand and grabbed the top of the car door, slamming it shut just as the man tried to open it. The sound echoed through the quiet lot like a gunshot. "Get away from my car," the man screamed, his composure shattering completely. He abandoned the boy and charged at Stone, his fists flailing. It was clumsy, fueled by rage and desperation rather than skill. Stone sidestepped the first wild swing, parrying the second with his forearm. He didn't strike back. His goal was not to win a fight, it was to contain the threat and protect the child. He used the man's own momentum against him, grabbing the collar of his polo shirt and pivoting, sending the man stumbling past him and into the side of the sedan. The man hit the car with a dull thud and slid to the ground, dazed. "Leo, get over here," Stone commanded, his eyes never leaving the downed man. "Behind me." Now for a moment, the boy was frozen, trapped between the monster he knew and the stranger who was fighting for him. Then, something broke free inside him. He scrambled away from the car, his worn-out sneakers slipping on a patch of oil, and ran. He didn't stop until he was safely behind the solid wall of Stone's back, his small hands grabbing a fistful of Stone's leather vest. He was trembling violently, but he was there. He was safe. The man on the ground groaned, pushing himself up. His face was a mask of fury. He had a small cut on his forehead from hitting the car. He looked from Stone to the boy hiding behind him, and a look of pure hatred filled his eyes. He reached behind his back again, and this time, he pulled out a small, snub-nosed revolver. "I told you," he spat, his voice shaking with adrenaline. "You should have just ridden away." Stone gently pushed Leo further behind him, shielding the boy completely with his body. He raised his hand slowly, a gesture of calm, of de-escalation. "Put the gun down," he said, his voice even. "It's over. The police are on their way." "You called the cops," the man shrieked, his panic rising. "You have no idea who I am. You have no idea what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done," Stone replied, his gaze locked on the man's eyes, not the gun. "I stopped you in the distance." A faint sound began to grow. A siren. It was still miles away, but it was getting closer, a wail of approaching justice cutting through the desert silence. The sound seemed to drain the last of the fight out of the man. His shoulders slumped. The gun in his hand wavered. He knew it was finished. He had been seen. He looked at Stone, at the unyielding figure who had single-handedly dismantled his world. He looked at the boy peeking out from behind the biker's legs. For a moment, he seemed to consider a final, desperate act of violence. Stone braced himself, ready to move, ready to sacrifice himself to protect the child behind him. But the moment passed. The man's arm dropped to his side. The gun clattered to the oily pavement. He sank to his knees, a defeated, pathetic figure, as the first police cruiser screamed into the gas station, followed closely by a second. Doors flew open. Officers emerged, weapons drawn, shouting commands. The scene was a blur of motion and noise. Stone felt a small hand tighten its grip on his vest. He didn't move. He just stood there, a silent sentinel, until an officer gently touched his arm. "Sir, you can step away now. We've got him." Stone looked down at the top of Leo's head. He placed a heavy hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's okay, kid," he murmured. "It's over." The police were efficient and professional. They had the man in cuffs within seconds, his protests and denials falling on deaf ears. One officer collected the fallen gun while another began speaking to the trembling teenage clerk. A female officer, her name tag reading SGT Evans, approached Stone and the boy. Her eyes were sharp but kind. "Are you two all right?" she asked, her voice soft. Stone nodded. "We're fine." He felt Leo press closer against his leg. The boy still hadn't said a word. He just held on, as if Stone were the only solid thing in a world that had turned upside down. Sergeant Evans knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with Leo. "Hey there," she said gently. "My name is Maria. I'm here to help." "You were very brave." Leo just stared, his large eyes filled with a mixture of relief and residual fear. Another officer came over. "Sarge, the guy's name is Richard Gale. He's got a warrant out of Arizona. Kidnapping." He glanced at Leo. "The boy is Leo Miller. He was taken from a park in Phoenix 3 days ago. Parents have been going out of their minds." Sergeant Evans looked at Stone, a new respect dawning in her eyes. "You stopped him. How did you know?" Stone reached into his vest pocket and pulled out the crumpled note. He handed it to her. She read the 4 simple words, and her professional composure cracked for just a second. She looked from the note to Leo, and then back to Stone. "Your instincts are good," she said. "Most people would have just kept on driving." "I'm not most people," Stone said quietly. "No," she agreed. "You're not." She stood up. "We've contacted the boy's parents. They're on their way. It'll be a few hours. We can take him to the station, get him some food." She reached a hand out to Leo. "Come on, Leo. Let's go get you something to eat. Maybe a big chocolate milkshake." Leo didn't move. He shook his head, his grip on Stone's vest tightening. His first words since the ordeal began were a quiet, choked whisper. "I want to stay with him." Stone's heart, a thing he often thought was made of little more than scar tissue and engine oil, seemed to crack open. He looked down at the boy and saw the profound trust in his eyes. He had been the first person to see him, the first person to believe him. He looked at Sergeant Evans, who gave a small, understanding nod. "All right," she said. "He can stay with you until his parents get here. We'll wait with you." Stone led Leo over to a dusty picnic table at the edge of the lot. He sat down, and the boy climbed up beside him, never letting go of his vest. An officer brought them 2 bottles of cold water. Stone opened one and handed it to Leo, who drank it down in 3 long gulps. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was a shared space of safety and recovery. For the next 2 hours, they just sat there as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and purple. Leo finally started to talk, his voice small at first, then growing stronger. He told Stone about his dog, about his favorite video game, about how much he missed his bed. He didn't talk about the last 3 days. He didn't have to. Then, a car sped into the lot, a minivan that screeched to a halt a few feet from the police cruisers. A man and a woman burst out, their faces etched with sleepless anxiety and frantic hope. "Leo," the woman cried, her voice breaking. Leo's head snapped up. His face, which had been so full of fear, transformed. "Mom! Dad!" He slid off the bench and ran, a small, determined missile of pure love, straight into his mother's arms. His father knelt and wrapped them both in a hug, the 3 of them becoming a single, sobbing entity. Stone watched from a distance, a lump forming in his throat. This was it. This was the reason he had stopped. This was the moment that made it all worthwhile. The reunion was raw, powerful, and profoundly beautiful. After a few minutes, Leo's father, his eyes red but shining with gratitude, approached Stone. He was a man of about Stone's age, with a kind face and hands that were trembling. I don't know what to say," he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "The police told us what you did. You saved our son." "I just saw a kid who needed help," Stone said, standing up and extending a hand. Leo's father ignored the hand and pulled the big biker into a fierce, grateful hug. "Thank you," he whispered. "God, thank you." When they broke apart, Leo came running over. He didn't hug Stone. He just stood in front of him and looked up at the man who had been his wall, his protector. "Thank you for seeing me," Leo said, his voice clear and steady. Of all the words spoken that day, those hit Stone the hardest. It wasn't about fighting or being a hero. It was about seeing. It was about paying attention. It was about recognizing the humanity and the fear in a stranger's eyes and choosing not to look away. "Anytime, kid," Stone managed to say. Anytime. 1 year later, the Iron Sentinels Motorcycle Club was hosting its annual charity ride. But this year, it was different. The event, which used to raise money for veteran support groups, had a new name and a new purpose. It was called Leo's Ride. All the proceeds now went to a new foundation the club had started, a foundation dedicated to supporting the families of missing children and funding awareness programs. The idea had been Stone's. After the incident at the gas station, he had ridden back to the clubhouse not with a clear head, but with a burning purpose. He told his brothers the story, and without a moment's hesitation, they had all agreed. They were sentinels. They were meant to stand watch. This was their watch. The foundation had become a local phenomenon. New stories were written. The community rallied around the group of gruff-looking bikers with hearts of gold. They weren't just a club anymore, they were a symbol of hope. Stone stood near the registration table, watching as hundreds of bikes lined up, their chrome glinting in the morning sun. He wasn't leading the ride today. He was waiting for his guest of honor. A familiar minivan pulled into the parking lot. Leo Miller jumped out, a year older, a foot taller, and a world away from the terrified, silent boy at the gas station. He was laughing, his eyes bright and full of life. He ran straight to Stone, who knelt and caught him in a bear hug. "Hey, Stone!" Leo yelled, his voice full of excitement. "Look at you, kid!" "You're getting big," Stone rumbled, his voice full of affection. They had stayed in touch. Leo's parents sent pictures and updates. Stone sent postcards from his rides. For Christmas, Leo had sent Stone a drawing. It was a picture of a big, strong biker standing in front of a small boy, shielding him from a dark, shadowy figure. Above the biker, Leo had written, "My Sentinel." Stone kept it tucked in the inside pocket of his vest, right where he had put the note. Leo's parents, Sarah and Tom, joined them, their faces relaxed and happy. They had become family, not just to Stone, but to the entire club. "We can't thank you enough for this, Marcus," Sarah said, using Stone's real name. "All of this? It's incredible. We're just doing our part," Stone said. Leo inspired it. "He's the real hero." Leo beamed. He had undergone therapy, and his parents said he was doing remarkably well. He still had nightmares sometimes, but they were getting rarer. He was playing baseball. He was getting good grades. He was healing. He was living the life that had almost been stolen from him. Later that day, as the ride was about to begin, Leo stood on a small stage with Stone. The club president presented the foundation with a giant check from the day's fundraising. Leo, holding a microphone in his slightly trembling hands, spoke to the crowd of hundreds of bikers. "A year ago, I was really scared," he said, his small voice carrying over the silent crowd. "I felt like I was invisible. But then, one person saw me. Stone saw me. He taught me that even when things are scary, there are good people who will help." He looked at Stone, his eyes shining. "Thank you for being a good person. Thank you all for being good people." A roar of applause and rumbling engines rose from the crowd. Stone put his hand on Leo's shoulder, his heart swelling with a pride and a love he hadn't known he was capable of. That day, he hadn't just saved one boy. He had started a ripple effect of good that was now a tidal wave, washing over his community, reminding everyone of a simple, profound truth. The world can be a dark place, but one person, one moment of courage, one decision not to look away, can be enough to light it up. All you have to do is be willing to see.